All right, let's go. Los Angeles Rams 36. Cleveland Browns 19. Much closer game than the score would indicate. Rams pulled away late. They moved to 6-6. Browns fall to 7-5. Joe Flacco made his Browns debut.
Can't believe Joe Flacco let me down.
They were up early, man.
Yeah.
Joe Flacco was cooking early.
Cooking. Yeah. It was a very Joe Flacco game, actually, where most of it was okay. And then randomly, with like 6-7 minutes left, it was just an absolutely absurd heave deep down the field to a safety. You're like, what? What is that? Joe Flacco seems to have spent his entire career believing that he had like 15 to 20 more yards of arm down the field than he actually had. Like this one, it made no sense whatsoever unless he could put 15 more yards of distance on it, and then maybe the wide receiver would have been the guy to run under it more than the safety or the corner. But as it was, with the arm that he actually possesses, it was just nuts. And that ends up being like a big swing in the game.
You could tell Flacco was rusty.
Yeah?
Early.
How could you tell?
He has a deep ball, and he overthrew it.
Oof. I mean, that goes against the strongest play of his career.
His arm was too rested.
Too rested.
He had too much rest. I mean, I saw some other people tweeting about, like, Flacco's arm looks good.
Yeah.
He had too much arm.
Lively.
Yeah. By the way, like at the end of Flacco's starting run with like Denver and everything, his arm did not look good at all compared to early in the career. So he was almost too rested because he's the king of the underthrown pass interference. You do not overthrow the deep ball. You're not giving your guy a chance to run into the defender and pick up a 40, 50 yarder. So he overthrew the deep ball early on. No, but I mean, look, they had a busted coverage for a touchdown early, got up. Amari Cooper got banged up in this game, and Flacco started feeding Elijah Moore, former Jets teammate. They did a nice job connecting on a bunch of plays. So it was a close game, man. Browns had a 10-minute drive to start the third quarter, but had to settle for a field goal. But then they get up, they score a touchdown to make it 20-19, miss the extra point, and that was where Rams go up by 8, 27-19. Flacco throws the ill-advised interception to nobody.
Yes.
And it was bad after that.
Myles Garrett was playing in the game, but as we speculated, it didn't look exactly like Myles Garrett. It looked a bit more like a limited version of Myles Garrett. He had a couple plays in there that looked pretty good, but he's going to end up with like a couple of pressures from an entire game, which is not how his season has been going otherwise. Remember before we talked about this weird difference between like Puka Nacua, no actual measurable of his is good, and yet...
Except what?
Except his... What did you call that stupid thing? His actual...
Whoa. Cut that out of the show. It's not a stupid thing.
It's a stupid name.
Game athleticism.
There you go. His actual tracking data suggested he was one of the most athletic players in the draft.
99th percentile.
There you go.
Yes.
And you're like, I don't really... Where is that? It doesn't really... you don't see it in the game most. There were multiple plays in this game where you
saw it.
There it is.
Yeah.
He catches, like a pass over the middle and then runs away from 3 different Browns defenders. You're like, that's in-game athleticism showing up.
Yes.
There was another one later on as well. Was that a run? It was like an end around or something where he gets the ball and again just accelerates away from a couple of guys. Like, there you go. Yeah. Doesn't matter what the 40 time is. That just showed you he ran the first one as well. It was interesting because I think it was a linebacker, a safety, and a corner. So, theoretically, sort of 3 different speed levels, and he just powered away from all 3 of them.
Sometimes, when you're watching Puka Nacua at BYU, sometimes we don't have enough time to watch all the film. But if you watch more, you see usage patterns. Like BYU would give him end arounds on the goal line and different things. Like they would feed him the ball. For a guy, when you were watching him, he definitely didn't feel athletic, right?
Right.
And again, I may have sent some suggestions around the league to keep an eye on Puka as a guy that I really liked. And some of the questions were like, does he have the quickness? Does he have the athleticism? Because it didn't feel like you didn't see it and feel it. But I think when the team feeds a guy the ball, they understand it. Like they see him every day and they might see something. I think there's signal in there, right? When it's like, the team is taking this guy who looks like he runs 4.6,
right?
And they're trying to get the ball in his hands in space. It doesn't make sense on paper, but there might be something there, or our just eyes are lying and deceiving sometimes.
Yeah.
And so he looked fast and explosive yesterday. Also got banged up a little bit after making that twisting catch, the contortionist once again. But Puka Nacua, 4 catches for 105, including that 70-yard touchdown, 2 carries for 34 yards as well. I want to highlight Kyren Williams again. He had 88 yards on 21 carries, scored late. He also had a great blitz pickup on that 70-yarder to Puka. It was also a strike by Stafford, who continues to just make big-time throws this year. Actually had a good stat line in this one. Stafford, 3 touchdowns, 110 passer rating. Big plays by Demarcus Robinson in this one from the Rams as well. So they remain in the mix here, man. 6-6. And I keep going back to that Green Bay game, man. Rams versus Packers a few weeks back where Stafford missed the game. That might come back and haunt the Rams if they don't make the playoffs.
Kyren Williams had his first 7 carries into a loaded box in this game. He'd literally never carried the ball into a loaded box so far in his Rams career.
Well, that's what the Browns do.
Well, and late in the game when the Browns, were trying to stop the Rams winning, they obviously were loading the box, and he ran not tremendously successfully against those. But he did force 3 missed tackles and get a couple of first downs, which were key. This game felt like, are the Browns' defense becoming a victim of their own success to a certain degree? They have been so good and so aggressive and so kind of positive EPA on defense, like they cause so many negative plays. Are they actually reaching the point now where their aggression is getting taken advantage of with these like end arounds and jet sweeps, and anything with misdirection seems to now be causing them an unusual degree of trauma because they're so aggressive at whatever the first thing they see is?
I'd have to look at it. I might be a victim of my own thing I hate, which is the highlight reel test. But it does feel like the Browns have given up a lot of explosives this year. But the EPA per play has been so good,
right,
because they're creating so many negatives. It does feel a little volatile. And I don't know if it's because I always have the Niners game that I had to, answer some questions about. The Niners game where Brock Purdy missed a bunch of throws and it felt like there was a lot of plays left on the table. The Colts hit those explosives the next week. This is one of those games, too. Like, they've given up. They gave up a 70-yarder to Pittsburgh earlier this year. They gave up this 70-yarder to Puka. I think it's just the nature of they play a lot more man coverage, and they are aggressive and in and around the line of scrimmage, and there are big plays to be made against the Browns. But it's team defense, right? So, like, you might have a busted coverage on the back end, but if you're getting pressure, which the Browns have done a great job of this year, QB can't hit it, or they're late to it, or they're getting hit while throwing, or whatever it might be. I think it's just a volatile defense right now, where you can have a game where you give up some explosives, or you could have a game where everything's working in tandem. You're creating man coverage is tighter. You're creating tighter windows, and you have dominant performances. I think that's just where we are with the Browns defense right now.
Yeah,
is that an answer? Is that a good answer?
It's an answer. It just feels at the moment like teams are starting to figure out how to take advantage of how aggressive they're being. Like that, any kind of disguise or misdirection or trickery seems to be causing them an undue amount of problems for a defense as good as they are.
Yeah. So I thought, man, I did have a lot of Flacco flashbacks here.
Flacco flashbacks.
I mean, there was just so many plays with the Ravens where he would just neglect to care about a safety or neglect to care about certain defenders. And it's like, those were 2 or 3 mistakes a game, that it's like, man, if you just took those out. And it felt like Flacco was going to play, at this point in his career, had a chance to play a cleaner brand of football than, say, DTR or PJ Walker.
Well, that was the thing last year with the Jets, right? It's like, yeah, Flacco was actually able to rack up quite a large amount of yardage and, production, but he could never get rid of the crazy, ridiculous plays that were like, what are you doing? Like,
and for all, like, this was a 20, again, they missed an extra point.
Yeah.
It was a 20-19 game. So at the end of the day, you're like, oh, the Browns gave up 36. Well, they didn't really, right? It was in the fourth quarter. Flacco throws a pick, and the Rams got up 27-19. Then Flacco throws a pick. They give up another quick touchdown. There's a sack for a safety in there. By the way, Aaron Donald's just bench pressing Joel Bitonio.
Donald was a beast.
Yes. I mean, it wasn't that bad by the Browns defense, but it's like if Flacco isn't turning the ball over.
But that one, like it's that better. One ridiculous play. Like that interception.
Yeah, it was one horrendous play.
It's insane. It's insane, and it was massively high leverage and hugely determining in the outcome of this game. Like he just throws a truly ridiculous pass that had no business being put in the air at any point. Like he's throwing at a guy, bracket covered, deep down the field, and it doesn't get close to being anywhere near him.
Yeah. Oh, that was when sorry. Yeah, so I had it right in my head. It was when it was a 20-19 game.
Yeah.
And that was what put the Rams up.
That play
8.
was like the game.
Yes.
Now, maybe the problem was Elijah Moore is not familiar with the Joe Flacco, because Elijah, like the ball's put in the air and his initial reaction is to kind of keep running, deep down the field, and then has to turn himself inside and look for it. And it's like, oh,
this is where it doesn't make sense. Elijah Moore's running a corner. Flacco's throwing it more up the seam.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
clear out. I mean, it looks like.
But the point being, a wide receiver that had a deep-rooted familiarity with Joe Flacco's game would understand that the second that ball is in the air, my job now is to stop running downfield, turn, and start heading back towards the quarterback, and therefore draw the pass interference play.
Run into the defender.
Like Flacco simply put the patented underthrown pass interference ball in the air, but that requires the wide receiver. Like, we have underestimated the skill set of Torrey Smith down the years, whose job was to just find the nearest DB and run into him.
Torrey had a unique skill set, though. He was fast enough to get behind the DB, so you have to stack the defensive back so you can run back into him.
Well, no, you just, I mean.
All right, let's just end it.
I
got no more use for this game.
Elijah Moore here is beyond a DB. He just neglected to find a guy and run into him. Like, if he'd turned, ran into the safety and fallen over, flag, great play, Joe Flacco. Still got it, baby.